Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching a brand new edition of India's World with me, Frank Pereira. The newly elected members of Bangladesh's parliament took the oath of office on Thursday amid an opposition boycott following the country's 11th parliamentary election. The MPs from former Prime Minister Khaleda Zia's Bangladesh Nationalist party-led major opposition alliance skipped the oath-taking ceremony. According to the Election Commission Gazette, Awami League, led by Hasina, won 257 out of the 299 seats in the December 30th election, more than enough for her party to form another 5-year term government. Khaleda's major opposition party, BNP, which suffered the most lopsided loss in its political history since 1978, won just 5 seats. It was the ruling party in Bangladesh for 2 terms since the country's return to democracy in 1991. AL's key ally in the elections, Jatiya Party, won 20 seats, while BNP's ally, Goro Forum, managed only 2 seats. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi was the first head of state or government to congratulate Sheikh Hasina on her victory. On this edition of India's World, we will analyze how Sheikh Hasina's win will affect India-Bangladesh ties. Joining me on the program today are Pinak Ranjan Chakravarty, former Secretary, MEA and Distinguished Fellow, Observer Research Foundation; Professor S.D. Muni, Foreign Affairs Expert; and Ashish Shukla, Research Fellow, Indian Council of World Affairs. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of India's World. Professor, I'd like to begin the program with you. First, let's look back at the election result itself. Do you think it was on expected lines? I mean, this kind of a victory for the Awami League?
Well, the victory was expected, but the extent of victory has dented the credibility of the victory. That's what I would say. Because it has gone to an extent where it's very difficult to believe that this sweep could be there in terms of elections. And now in the midst of a lot of allegations and charges, I think something has to be done to restore the credibility of the electoral process and election commission.
And whose prerogative is that, do you think?
Well, I think the government can do it. Election commission itself can do it. Election commission has promised that it will go into the complaints, and let us see how they go into the complaints. But at the same time, because there are allegations against election commission, and those officers who might have deviated from the given chart of duty, I think should be brought to the book. If that is done, to a large extent, I think credibility of the election commission would be established, and as a result, the credibility of the elections would be established also.
Right. Ambassador, taking cue from what Professor just said, and let's take it forward a little bit, because the opposition too has cried foul. How valid are the claims of the opposition, do you think?
I think there are certain claims that could be valid, in the sense that even the Bangladeshi newspapers and agencies are reporting that. And even today there are reports about how election polling agents of the opposition were just not available, not missing, how certain polling stations where people went in to vote, they saw the ballot boxes already half full, etc. Anyway, I think certainly something has happened. I think the Bangladesh Election Commission has itself acknowledged. What it could do is now, since they have promised some investigation, is that they should investigate, and where the most egregious kind of evidence is there of certain kind of malpractice, I think that should be done. And I think because elections are so integral to a democratic credibility of a democratic process, that this is essential. But I don't doubt that it will change the result in any way. I mean, because I think the victory was expected. But what undermines the credibility of the election is that when in 2014, when there was no opposition, they still did not get as many seats. So this is a bit of a, it strains the imagination a bit as to when there was opposition on the field and opposing the ruling party candidates, they still got more seats.
Absolutely. Ashish Shukla, in the meantime, the UN has taken cognizance of what has happened. It has called for some kind of action against, those behind the violence and also those behind the intimidation. How do you see foreign factors coming into this particular aspect of it?
Yes, definitely there are certain factors that will influence the, what Bangladesh government and other institutions take. But There are also friends of Bangladesh who would be there to help Bangladesh if there is any untoward situation. So definitely there are credible sources that tell that you look, if in case of Bangladesh faces an international opposition to this, there will be countries who will come out openly and help Bangladesh restore the kind of mandate they have got it right now.
And as far as the violence and the intimidation itself is concerned, who do you think is going to put an end to all of that? I mean, obviously, try and bring those behind the violence and the intimidation to book. Is it the government's prerogative, or whose prerogative is it really?
Definitely it's the government. I mean, there is no other way to deal with the kind of violence which has happened. Government is the only reliable I mean, it is the Bangladesh government who have to respond to all kind of charges, and they have to investigate fairly. And then, if, as Professor Muni and Ambassador Chakravarty was telling, that if they found some irregularities and there are people involved in that, so they must be brought to justice.
All right. Okay, Professor. As far as the election itself is concerned, the results and everything else, of course, are now behind us. How significant was this election for Sheikh Hasina, and how significant was the election for the people of Bangladesh?
Well, it was a significant election, for the consolidation of democracy. And if you want to go back to the elections, all said and done, the opposition had completely eroded its own standing in the Bangladeshi political system. BNP's two leaders, Hasina and Khaleda and her son, were completely out of operation so far as these elections were concerned. They knew that they don't have much to go to the people with, and that's why they put up this coalition where they brought in Kamal Hussain, who is a very credible political figure. I don't know why he joined, but he joined on the condition that Jamaat-e-Islami should not be incorporated. But BNP went ahead and gave tickets to Jamaat-e-Islami, which further dented into the opposition front. And I have read interviews of Kamal Hussain in which he himself said that this should not have happened, this has happened, but this is what it is. Therefore, opposition had eroded itself and it was to go. It could not win this election. Then, for consolidation of democracy, it is necessary. Look, I think Bangladesh is on a cusp of a kind of a struggle where there are issues like a secular polity or a soft Islam versus radicalized Islam headed by Jamaat-e-Islami and others. Bangladesh is talking of, recalling its independence struggle where the entire foreign influences of Pakistan, China, even the Western had dominated Bangladesh for a very long time. They are talking of a new nationalism. All this got reflected into this election, and I think they were important. So far as India is concerned, I think we have had the best of relationship with Bangladesh for the last 10 years, if not more. And I think that momentum would continue thanks to Hasina's coming back. Lot of things have been sorted out. There are still issues which, like ties.The and others, I think will be sorted out in the days and months to come. All right.
Talking about issues, Ambassador, what do you think are the biggest challenges really for Sheikh Hasina going forward?
Well, I think internally for Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, I think the challenges would be basically how to, we have already talked about the election, how to restore her own, in the sense of the credibility of the process or institutions, because she's had problems with the judiciary also. If you recall, one of the Supreme Court Chief Justice had to actually leave the country, and the Election Commission has come under some cloud. There has been differences between the election commissioners. So one big challenge is to how to restore credibility to institutions in Bangladesh. The other, of course, is providing a clean administration, which is also a huge challenge in a country which is generally known for its fairly high degree of corruption in its administration. So I think those are the big challenges. She has, of course, risen to the challenge of fundamentalism, the Islamic extremists, the religious extremists, and she has cracked down very heavily, and she's done a commendable job on all kinds of extremist activity, which has helped India. it has secured her own country. And as far as India is concerned, I think the biggest challenge would be, water sharing is a challenge, but then that has been going on for a long time. I think the bigger challenges are how to complete the connectivity projects on time, how to increase trade, how to manage the border, how to deal with the fallout of the NRC in Assam, for example. When suddenly the NRC declares that a certain number of people are not Indians, then what happens? I think that itself will pose a challenge to bilateral relations also.
All right. And, Ashish Shukla, let's talk about the opposition now in Bangladesh. Where does this result really leave the opposition, and where does the opposition go from here?
Opposition is completely decimated. And why it is decimated is also important to understand. The opposition, first, as Professor Moni mentioned, that they included Jamaat, despite other parties had some reservations over it. Apart from that, the agenda of opposition was like they fought for the democracy. They fought to release Khaleda Zia from jail. But they never touched upon issues that actually impact people. So they were not in a position to mobilize the kind of support which was required for an election like this to win. And from now, they have no other option but to participate and go to the people again. And yes, certain state institutions have to give them the kind of space which they deserve to regroup themselves and then again participate in the kind of political process which is going on. So that's how they have to proceed.
All right. Looking forward now, Professor, let's talk about India-Bangladesh ties really, and how does this result impact the bilateral relationship between the two countries? Both you and the ambassador touched upon it, but I would like to dig a little more deeper over the next 10 minutes or so.
Well, first, go back to the domestic challenges. I think one major challenge before Hasina is that she should not take to, authoritarian trends. There's a lot of fear in Bangladesh about that. With such a massive majority, she can do anything, but she should not do things which are not democratic. And Bangladesh pattern should not go on some of the Southeast Asian countries' patterns of one-party dominant system. So there is a real challenge for her to create a space for democratization of the polity, besides restoring credibility of the institutions, as the ambassador said.
This result, Professor, is it also a great opportunity really for Sheikh Hasina going forward?
Yes, exactly.
To set the wrongs right.
From a political leader, she should now emerge as a stateswoman and show that she knows what this country really needs. She has been, as I mentioned earlier, she has been able to establish the credibility of independence struggle and brought back the freedom movement spirit in the country. Now it is time to build Bangladesh for future. She has done a great deal so far as economic output is concerned, but she has to go into the social, political and institutional aspects of the country. There is a lot more people who are poor, who have to be brought up. Despite economic growth, equality is not there. There are several issues, and I think she should look into it. Coming to India, one of the major concern in India is China's influence. I think we must understand and be very cautious and careful about it, even sensitive towards Bangladesh, that Bangladesh has relations with China for a very, very long time. And the Chinese have tremendous influence even in the Bangladesh security forces, to the extent that they always treated India as a threat. Thanks to the relations in last decade between India and Bangladesh, that Bangladesh has set aside that kind of a perception and are willing to cooperate with India on all matters. So we must be sure, and I think Hasina has so far been very accommodative, not allow Chinese to do something in Bangladesh which might impinge on the security and autonomy of Bangladesh and security of India also. Chittagong port, they wanted to have a deep sea port, they wanted to come in there. Deep sea port is yes, but should it be handed over to the Chinese like they have taken Hambantota or anything? These are the issues which we must be very careful about it, and we would expect Bangladesh to be very sensitive so far as India's security concerns are related.
All right. And Ambassador, how big a concern really is China, do you think, going forward? Is that something that we should still be wary about despite the robust ties, despite the robust bilateral relationship between the two countries?
Look, I think we have to be realistic. China will be a development partner for Bangladesh as it is for many other countries in our region and beyond. China is also one of our largest trading partners. We have a trade deficit of 60 billion with China. So I think everybody has been dealing with China. But I think Bangladesh is fully conscious and very sensitive to the fact that it will not cross a red line which will create suspicions or security problems for India. I think that factor is very well known. And I don't think that will happen as far as Hasina is concerned. It won't happen under any government, I think, because I think Bangladesh as a whole realizes that good relations with India is good for their economy, it's good for India, it's good for everybody, good for the people. And I think but again, her challenges are many. And I think after all, Bangladesh also is not a very developed country, but it has done very well on the economic front. But there are many, many challenges. Joblessness is one. Inequitable growth is one. The rich-poor divide is one. And I think the main thing is also that they have to expand their export basket, which is limited to garments in the sense that
they should look beyond.
They have to expand the economic content of their exports.
All right. Ashish Shukla, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi was the first head of state really to congratulate Sheikh Hasina on her victory. What does that say about the ties between the two countries?
That says the importance India attaches to its neighbor, Bangladesh. I mean, if you remember correctly, I mean, during Sushma Swaraj's visit to Dhaka, she was categorical in highlighting that, look, India's neighborhood first policy, Bangladesh comes first. And Bangladesh is quite important for us for many, many reasons, like we have the Siliguri corridor. And many people think that Bangladesh is India locked, but in fact, if you see the map, we would say that you would be able to understand that, look, our northeast is actually Bangladesh locked. So if Bangladesh doesn't cooperate with you, so you may have certain issues. So in that sense, India attaches the kind of importance which Bangladesh deserves, and Prime Minister Modi did the right thing to congratulate her first, immediately after her election victory.
What does the third term mean for the ties between India and Bangladesh? What can we expect over the next few years to come, Professor?
No, I think we should expect consolidation. But I must add here that, look, there are still pending issues from the Bangladesh side which we have to sort out. The biggest issue is ties.The.
Yes.
Now, the agreement has been already signed between the two. I mean, it's almost ready in terms of the draft and other things. Negotiations are all over, which was done even during the last the UPA government. And Mr. Modi should have signed it. Now, they have not been able to sign it, to my mind, largely because of political factors, that maybe the ruling party would want to have an influence in Bengal, therefore they do not want to do things in a hurry. But these are not the national issues. Therefore, in terms of national interest, I think Mr. Modi has the strength in parliament, and he should have gone forward and signed it, and we must complete it, because thank God it did not become an electoral issue. In Bangladesh, it could have. Then there are smaller issues like border smuggling, the role of the border security forces. Some of the terrorist and insurgent groups still continue to cross each other. The NRC issue and its fallout which might happen. We must assure Bangladesh and Rohingya. I mean, they were very unhappy on the initial position which we took on Rohingya. Even now it is a big issue whether Rohingya should go back to Myanmar, how should they go back, and if they don't go back, how will Bangladesh bear the burden of that? So there are issues involved, and I think India should come forward to whatever extent it is capable to help Bangladesh resolve some of these issues, and there should be least bilateral contentious problems on the table.
All right. And Ambassador, what aspects of the bilateral relationship need special attention immediately and maybe in the long run, do you think?
I think the defense relationship between the two countries and security relationship is an important domain that we need to work on a lot. And I think a lot has been done in terms of intelligence exchange and cooperation, which has led to certainly the insurgencies and other terrorists and other groups being on the back foot. But I think the border is a huge challenge. I think we need to upgrade the border facilities. Some of it is being done, but I think this is such a long border that we need far more, border trading stations, the land customs stations, and the integrated checkposts, etc. I think that is lagging. I think the border infrastructure is lagging, and I think border management. The fact is that people do cross and over to each other's territory. So that has to be controlled, that has to be monitored, because this can lead to groups which are inimical to the interests of both countries that can come and go. The other example is a fake Indian currency, which tends to come in through Bangladesh, through Malda district mainly. So there are obviously smuggling routes there which do all these things. So there are all these micro challenges that are there. But overall, I think the relationship is on a very sound footing. And with the return of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, I think we can expect certainly a far more degree of consolidation and perhaps venture into new areas like cooperation under BIMSTEC, the Bay of Bengal community, and many other issues like that.
All right. And Ashish Shukla, how do we enhance the already robust ties between the two countries?
That is the real challenge actually. We have an excellent relations in the recent past, and we have to maintain that momentum. To begin with, we have already offered up to 8 billion of line of credit to Bangladesh, and I think that we should focus on completing the projects which have already been identified under these. I mean, there is a concern in Bangladesh that though we have offered a lot of credit to Bangladesh, but they have not been able to complete projects. I mean, 2 to 3 billion I think have been already used, but we should focus that all the 8 billions are actually spent on the projects which have already been identified. And apart from that, we should continue cooperation in the in countering terrorism, which is also an important area. And as mentioned by Ambassador Chakravarty, that smuggling and other issues are also to be taken up. So gradually.
Right. Okay. Quick closing comments from all my guests. Starting first with you, Professor.
A landmark position today we have, and I think both the countries should decide to redefine the relationship on a more firmer grounds for future. Not only in bilateral context, but also in the regional, in Bay of Bengal context, not only BIMSTEC, I would say, even I said what you call the blue economy, which they can start using now that the maritime boundary has been decided to the satisfaction of both of them.
All right, Ambassador?
I think what we need as a vision for the future is a certain amount of strategic integration between the two countries. And when I say strategic integration, I include everything, defense, security. I think we have to ramp up the strategic integration and connectivity, all these things, because Bangladesh is geographically located in such a region that this connectivity is going to help both countries. And I think that is what we need to do.
It's high time we stop looking at Bangladesh traditionally and look at new avenues, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. We have to look at new things. I mean, cyberspace, for example. We already have an agreement which was reached last time for Bangladesh providing connectivity from Chittagong to Agartala. So there are many other issues like that. The cyber domain is going to be the future of future of lots of things, including cyber crimes and cyber attacks. So I think that is one area where we have some expertise, and we can help Bangladesh. The other areas, of course, oil and gas, energy. Both are energy deficient countries, and the Bay of Bengal does provide a certain amount of opportunity for energy exploration, and so that we can both work towards consumption of that energy which we can discover.
Absolutely. Ashish Shukla, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
Yeah, we are already cooperating on connectivity projects, but I think we should take it on a priority basis. Like BBIN, we have not been able to move the kind of speed which we were expecting, so we should also cooperate in that area. and so that the cooperation could be strengthened further.
All right. On that note, then, we'll call it a wrap on this edition of India's World. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. We'd like to hear from you as well. Do share your feedback and your suggestions with us. Our email ID is indiasworld.feedback@gmail.com. You can also tweet to us using our Twitter handles at FRP09 and at Rajya Sabha TV. That's it from me. See you again next time.